Hello and welcome to Connect to Love here on PRN FM, where each week is an amazing exploration into the many facets of love, oneness, and our connection to the human spirit. I'm Lisa LeRose, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Michael J. Russ. And today we're going to step into a conversational space that feels so incredibly sacred. We are so blessed in life to run into different individuals. And many years ago, I had the opportunity to discover a wonderful series entitled Soul Biographies by pioneering filmmaker Nick Askew. And what made these soul biographies so captivating was that they were short, black and white, 7-minute glimpses that were created with the intention of capturing the soul of humanity. Nick used his film camera as if he were capturing a close-up portrait with the hopes that we might see ourselves reflected in each other, or as he put it, so that we might remember that we all belong to each other, that we're all connected. And one of the people that Nick featured in his soul biographies was a gentleman named David Roche. As a child, David was facially disfigured, and since he wanted to feel normal, he learned to be charming and have a sense of humor. David said that he was used to living in a world of double-take stares and averted glances. He said that they were constant reminders that he was different, but he also said that it usually only lasted for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then it was gone. David did a one-man show during his life, and before he went on stage, he would feel the love that was waiting for him and would send it out because he felt so much love for himself. He believes that we all tend to be judged by that first stare, and in the soul biography, Nick proposed the idea that perhaps it's our fear that we are separate that compels us to hide what we believe to be imperfect. And I recall being so inspired by David's perspective on life, but hadn't thought about him for years until today when I received the email from Nick that shared the news of David's passing. And it's interesting because David was such an amazing and unique individual and had such a positive perspective on life. David was really so inspired by life. He had a spirit of beauty. He was a teacher, an author, and a storyteller. And it's interesting when individuals that, when they transition from the physical plane, I think we are gifted with so many messages and so many teachings. And one of the ones that really inspired me was that he said that perhaps true beauty is something that draws our attention at second glance, once the judgment of the first glance has realized its mistake. And so I shared this video and I shared the information about David, and Michael said, I'd love to do the show. And I think that it's just going to be a wonderful exploration. So Michael, I want to welcome you, and I'm so excited to really explore the distinction between the first and second glance and how it changes everything, because I think the first glance when we give somebody, it's a reflex, it's an automatic condition, but that second glance, when we take a second look at something, it's an act of a conscious choice, and it's almost like a soul-level recognition. And I think that when we are able to tune into that, and that's really the essence of who we are. And that's what I have said so many times over the last few weeks, that all we're looking for is to be seen. People have different challenges in their lives. They want to be seen and they want to be loved. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Michael, and see where this conversation goes, because it's a big one.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. I love being here every week on our podcast, Connect to Love. This is the perfect topic. Really fits in well with this podcast is really all about. And what I loved about the video that we saw was just it was the energy level of love was so high. Not only because this video, just so our audience can understand, was an interview with David and his wife, and it was him telling his story and them telling their story in front of a bunch of children, a group of children. And I don't know what their ages were, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's somewhere around between 9 and 10 years of age, maybe 8 to 10. But these children are so incredibly insightful in terms of when they asked them what they saw when they saw him the first time, and they were very honest about saying what they saw. And the interesting thing is that when you said first look, I think that's really based on, in my view, people's existing perceptions. It's a judgment based on existing perceptions that they have about what they've been taught to think is beautiful and not beautiful. And once anyone gets the opportunity to learn about someone, they first make a judgment of like that as being not beautiful. There is that opening to take a second look is what creates that second look, in my view. That it creates the shift in perception that leads to seeing them differently, seeing their inner beauty. Because we are taught really to judge people on how they look, on their exterior. And really, that's all you've got unless you actually sit and chat with them, talk with them, get to know them. You don't know them from the inside. You can't gauge or can't see, say, their inner beauty because you're not talking with them. So a lot of what we have on social media and everything else nowadays is based on people's external appearance. And there is no really getting to know someone when you're dealing in the social media realm, which is why it's important to connect with people. And this interview was a deep and abiding connection with these children, and him telling his story about what he thought about himself. And he was born with what he called beautifully a facial difference. Facial difference. I thought that was fantastic, right? As opposed to a facial disfigurement, something with that lower energy in terms of his a way to describe himself. And I thought that was a brilliant way to really say, hey, I have a facial difference. There are many people in this world that have facial differences. And you started naming a few, and the kids laughed when you got to Michael Jackson, which I thought was very interesting. They just cracked up. Little humor there, but really, the younger we are, the less we judge. The older we are, in my view, the more we judge. And this interview, catching these kids at the age that they were, in my view, would shift and change their entire outlook about how they perceive people, which is so beautiful and, in my view, so loving. Because that's the thing I was thinking about. This video, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these kids, 10, 20, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, this is imprinting. It's helping them understand that the inner beauty, someone's inner beauty, often cannot be seen on the first look.
Absolutely.
And that you have to connect, you have to be eye to eye, you have to speak with them, you have to step into their energy field in order to grasp the beauty that exists there that you cannot see. And I remember this. I remember it so much because, I wore glasses as a kid, and the whole thing about glasses back in the 70s was four eyes. People would be called four eyes, right? I don't even know if that term exists today, but back then, if you wore glasses, people looked at you and they said, "Oh, hey, four eyes," and you're like, "Yeah, that's not a big deal. I can see." You might initially take it as a slight, as a sign of disrespect. However, I came to understand that people that was just the first thing that popped out of their mouth. Something rote, something memorized based on what somebody had said, what they had picked up somewhere. And you got beyond that once you met them, once they met you. And in the world we have today, one of our biggest challenges, our greatest challenges, at least in the United States I know, is that people don't travel in their lifetime more than 75 miles from home. And if that's the case, then you're always seeing the same people. You're always having the same perceptions, the same beliefs, the same making the same judgments based on what you see optically in media of all kinds. And then someone can simply say, this is good, this is bad. The advertisements that you see nowadays, the intense ads for wrinkle creams and spot removers and the things of that nature. And I love his wife had freckles. Remember that? His wife had freckles. His wife had freckles, and she described how she thought freckles were a really bad thing, really ugly thing, because people would comment on her freckles. So she'd go out in the sun, and the more sun she got, the darker her freckles got. And then she tried to get some sort of cream, and the cream reacted with her skin, and then her freckles turned red. And I was like, they turned splotchy. Your face, the skin texture became splotchy, and then it was just one big mess. And this is because, as if we don't know already, we judge ourselves initially based on what our external world thinks about us. And the shift, I call it the shift, occurs in our life when we discover that our external world has no power to judge us unless we allow that judgment to occur, and then we take it on as our own, and we begin to believe it and perceive our life through that belief. And so I loved that she just came to grips with her. She just simply accepted that she had freckles, right? And as our carrying that whole idea in our energy field of I don't like the way I look because I have freckles, once you shift that perception of yourself, that belief about yourself, other people really, they don't care. They won't see it because we attract what we resonate. And if we resonate the flaws that we believe that we have, we put that out into our energy field, people will pick up on it, and we will resonate. That it will be resonated right back to us. It will mirror right back to us. People will comment on it. You'll bring people into your life who will comment on it. Otherwise, you know what? Again, nobody cares, right?
You're right.
And so it was such a beautiful video. It was such a poignant message in that when we have to be very cognizant or cautious of when we see someone who might look differently than anybody else that we know, that a judgment of them is misplaced because we're looking at the surface and not inside. It's like you're judging the book by its cover, and instead of reading the book and finding out the joy, the love, and all of those positive feelings that can come from reading the book, you're just looking at the cover going, I don't like that. Right? Or this looks interesting, but I don't know about that. I'll wait till later. The biggest thing nowadays, I guess, is what I said, is that we have to, and this is what this video really, really kind of put forth to me, is that we have to look beyond our first glance and dig deeper and get to know whomever it is, and understand that there is always real beauty beneath, always real beauty beneath the surface. And it's up to us to ferret it out, to connect and to discover that beauty, because it's going to be, we each have an individual, as individuals, we have our own individual beauty, and it is who we are. It's our essence, it's our authenticity, right? So that's kind of, my take on the video, and I thank you for asking. Yeah. Yeah,
no, I think David was somebody that was very magnetic in his presence. His wife described, and she shared that before she ever saw his face, she heard his voice across the curtain. They were doing a volunteer massage class. And she fell in love with his voice, the essence, the kindness. She said she was listening to him speak, and it was the kindness and his depth and what he was saying. And then she was imagining, she said, somebody that was like 6 foot tall and big and dark curly hair. And then she pulled back the curtain, And her automatic first glance startled her, and she walked away. And she said she felt so ashamed for doing that because she hadn't come back for a second glance. And what was so interesting, as a child, he developed this sort of dark spot, and then they did surgeries, and he lost his lower lip, and then they did radiation, and he lost his teeth. And so it was something that he grew into. His mother always said how amazing he was, how smart he was, how intelligent he was, and she said, you can be anything you want to be. His grandmother said, as you said, Michael, hold your head up high. She instilled that confidence in him, and I don't know if you remember him saying, when people see someone who's disfigured, and he said, I'm able to be myself, it seems like a miracle to them. People who look like me aren't supposed to be confident and comfortable in their own skin. And I think that it really resonated with me, and I know it resonated with the children because they felt it. You looked at the expressions on their faces, and you could feel it. And one of the children stood up, and she said, when I first saw you, I felt sorry for you. And then as I started to listen to you, I realized how comfortable you were in your skin and how amazing that was. And I think that when we go past that physical appearance and we let go of our judgments and step into those extraordinary moments, if you never know who you're going to meet. And I think you're absolutely right, Michael, because the power of being absolutely authentic was one of his superpowers. He was able to stand there confidently, and when he first came out, he said to the children, he said, okay, everybody always wants to know, what happened to your face? And so he has them in unison say, what happens to your face? Yeah. And then he gave them the answers. But I think what it did, he was very, very firm about saying, when you meet somebody that looks like me, his wife asked the question, well, how do you want people to react to you? And he said, I want people to look at me in the eye. He said, that's what each one of us wants. Each one of us wants to have somebody look us in the eye. And she spoke about her own experience of being a child and moving from a school of 400 children to a school of, I don't know, maybe several thousand. And nobody knew her. And she said, this one really pretty girl befriended her and introduced her to some people and then invited her home. And when she got to this little girl's house, she said, oh, no, you're going to have to hide your necklace because my parents are very prejudiced against Jewish people. And as Marlena said, she said, it kind of took her aback. She said, I won't be allowed to be friends with you based on that. So that's another type of a judgment that people, whether it be your religion, your race, whatever it is, sometimes that first glance only sees the appearance or the status. What kind of car do you have? What are the labels? What are the differences between us? But when we step into that second glance, and as David said, you look into my eyes, you're seeing the humanity. You're seeing the kindness as his wife did. She really saw his soul beauty. And I think that by taking that second look, it did transform her life. And then she said she had an opportunity to revisit that relationship, and she asked him, will you work with me? And she said she started wondering, what are the things, does he date? What are the things that he likes? And really delving into that. And so when he finally got the courage up to ask her out on a date, and they went out, she was waiting for that first kiss, but he was still in the mindset that he was, at that point, not enough for her. And when it came time to say goodnight, she said, midnight, I've got to go. And he said he had lots of boring conversation, but he was waiting to ask her for a kiss. And she said, when he finally said, well, I've really been wanting to kiss you. And then she said, well, I've been waiting for that all night. And then he said, well, then I stood up and I look at me, I'm so handsome and strong,
yeah.
and I love that. I really did. And I think that is right, exactly that, because it became a different paradigm. And I really do. I think that seeing that inner beauty, and that's what those children saw in him, that every single person who has ever met him or watched the videos or just saw that aspect. I mean, even in myself, when he was speaking about different things, my mind went to different places where I was in a similar experience. And he said that dating was not easy for him. So when he had that date with her, and he went back to a time in his childhood where he was invited to a girl-boy party, and they were playing Spin the Bottle, and the prettiest girl in school, and the bottle pointed towards him. And she said, "Oh, no," and she spun it again. And it didn't make him feel bad, which I thought was really amazing. He said, I don't remember exactly what his words were something like, you want this, or something like that.
You want me.
But,
you want me.
Yeah, you want me. You're absolutely right. But it was done out of, he saw his own gifts. And that's what I really, really, really loved about it. I think that it is the idea of that unconditional self-love that you and I speak about all the time, having that unconditional love of self no matter what appearances say. And I think it was just beautiful.
I was absolutely. Anybody who watches the video will understand. Please put a link to it, by the way.
I will, definitely.
So that our audience can kind of catch this and get the drift exactly what we're talking about. Beyond the video, the thing that resonated with me more than anything else is that people can sense and feel the way you feel about yourself. And his level of confidence, the level of confidence that he developed about himself was just stellar. And when you have that level of self-confidence that he developed, it doesn't really matter. And interestingly enough, he developed a wonderful sense of self at an early age. And his mother had a lot to do with it. To do with it, which was really awesome. And because, she's his mother, of course. However, if his mother had felt sorry for him, then that would have made it much more challenging, in my view, for him to move forward. But she was pretty much there and into it and said, you can be anything that you want to be. You can be anything that you want to be in life. You can be anything that you want to be in life. You remember that? It's like you can be anything that you want to be in life.
Yep, and
right?
I know your mother said the same thing to you, and that's what my mother always said to me too. She always said, you can do whatever you want to do, and I know you were blessed with a mother that was the same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I moved every couple of years just like you did, and I went to 4 elementary schools and 3 high schools, and every time I walked in the door, I had to kind of feel my way around, right, to see, because in bigger schools you got cliques, in smaller schools you depend more on each other. When I was overseas in the Philippines, in Taiwan we had a small school, and small presence as far as Americans. In the Philippines, the school was much bigger. The base was bigger in the 60s, and there were more kids at the elementary school. And it was beautiful because back in those days, all you had was each other. You didn't have anything to keep you busy. There were no video games. If you wanted to have any fun, you needed to go make friends and go do pickup baseball games and pick up football games, flag football, tackle football, whatever it was, pick up basketball. You had to get out and meet people, meet kids on their own, in their own turf or wherever they were. In school, in a basketball court, you go up, you stand there, and you ask if you can play. You just have to be forward like that. That's the only way. Otherwise, you just sit down on the bench, and you'll never get into the game. And same thing with everything else. We used to have pick-up football games behind the house. There was a green space, And everybody in the neighborhood would come together, and we just do whatever. Nobody judged each other. Nobody said, hey, you're this or you're that. We had black kids, Asian kids, white kids, Mexican kids, and everybody just saw everybody for who they were, which is really awesome. Now, going from a school that had 365 kids from kindergarten to 12th grade senior to a school that had 3,500 in upstate New York, that was a totally different experience. That was the largest school I'd ever gone to. And that was my second high school. And it was, again, you walk in the door, and it was in Rome, New York, which is that city was predominantly Italian. And my brother and I came in. My sister went to a different school than us, but we came into high school, and we were, we hooked up with some other kids, and I found something new. I had started playing drums when I was 7. There's an equalizer. Everybody loves music, and everybody wants to be somebody else. I mean, when you're young, you want to be someone else, right? So when I was playing the drums, that was being a musician. That opened doors like immediately. People were like, "Oh, wow, really? You do that?" And then saw me, heard me play whatever, and it was, at that particular point, you can have all the friends that you really want. The interesting thing is which ones are really friends, and which ones are just hangers-on because you're doing something that they admire. And what I coming back to David, the beautiful thing about his life and his experience is how he embraced himself. He embraced his difference. The difference, and we all have differences. Sometimes you can't see them. We all have differences. We're all different from one another in one way or the other, experientially or physically or in some other way, mentally. And coming together as you're, getting to know yourself, let's say, and getting to know your strengths. And to me, it always comes back to that. You build confidence from what you first see as weakness. You build confidence from there. You build it up. Instead of saying, this is a deficit, it's not a deficit. It's actually a plus. It's a positive for you. And I love the way that he saw that as being a positive for him. Hey, listen, he wasn't going to change, right? It's either get to love you, or not have a really great life, because I'm sure his wife wouldn't have been half as interested in him if he hadn't had such a wonderful personality, demeanor, a sense of love. Like you said, when he was behind the curtain, the way that he spoke caught her ear, and at that time in her life, she'd never heard anything like that before, and she was like, wow. And then she went on the other side of the curtain, and of course had that reaction that, in my view, like I said earlier, is pretty commonplace. Your first glance with anyone, you don't even have to have any difference in the way that you look. It's just sometimes it can just be it's just the physicality, right? The physical aspect of someone can set you off. Somebody maybe doesn't have an arm, doesn't have a wrist, a hand, there's nothing past the elbow or one leg. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can initially take you to a place of judgment. However, the beautiful thing about his wife and many people I know who experience this second glance and really find the treasure in the second glance. That's what I like to call it, is the treasure. You find the beauty, the treasure, the gold, the riches in the second glance, and the conversation that ensues. If we just teach ourselves that there is richness in everyone, and that initially, whatever your initial response is, reaction, she reacted based on experiential wisdom. She had never seen anything like that before, and that is quite normal. We have to say that because we only know what we know. Right? We don't know anything else. We have to grow and learn and evolve and transform through life experience. And that's what she did. And I love that about it.
She was a pretty remarkable woman, and she is a pretty remarkable woman on her own, because she said when she introduced him to her parents, she called up and she said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I met the most amazing man." And she started, and he's caring and he's loving. And she said, "Oh, and he has a facial disfigurement." She just in the grass is green. Yeah, no big deal. And then she went on to share that when her parents met him for the first time, they reacted the way that she had the very first time. But then as they got to know him, I don't even think she probably got to the point where she didn't even notice it anymore. And one of the children, you could see all of the children were just riveted by him and by her, both of them. And I think there were so many teachable moments in that interaction. But the one child's observation just, oh my gosh, he said, "I think you actually accept that you're beautiful more than people who don't have a face disorder." And I was like, boom, drop the mic, right?
Yeah, bingo.
I'm like, what a remarkable insight, because really, it was so profound, because beauty isn't something that we possess. It is something that is inside of us already. And David, in the Soul Biography, which is just a short 7-minute film, he spoke about the fact that he recognized he wouldn't be able, as a young child, to attract people to interact with him based on his external appearance. So he cultivated his sense of humor and his wit, and he read, and he became interesting. And he was, I think, just naturally a compassionate human being. And Bashar always talks about this concept of true reflection, that the physical world is nothing more than a mirror of our internal state of vibration. And man, did David have a powerful internal state of vibration. And I think that when we look at another person, and if we judge them based on that unexamined first glance, we aren't actually seeing them at all. We're only seeing our own filters, our own fears, our own limitations reflected back at us. So if I'm looking at your shoes and going, well, his shoes aren't XYZ brand, and I've got these, I'm better than him. No.
Yeah.
You're mirroring that insecurity that I have to have a certain brand of shoes in order to validate who I am. But when we look through the eyes of unconditional love, which that second glance is, we are aligning to source frequency. I can't tell you how many times over the last 2 weeks I have said, align yourself with what Pram Gregory says. If you have a challenge, what would love do? What would love do? See yourself as that love. See that divine intelligence looking back at you. What would love do? I really just love that wisdom, because there is this pure energy in the essence of who we are. And when we perceive, not just with our physical eyes, but we begin to interact with that eternal nature of the essence of who we are, that's when I think we truly live. It's just so beautiful. I was so grateful to Nick for sending it that, because if David would have passed, I might not have known, and then it gave me a chance to revisit, and for us to have this wonderful conversation, Michael, because it's so inspiring.
Yeah, there are no coincidences. It's a topic, in my view, that is completely and totally relevant nowadays, because we're bombarded by messages of, you're not worthy, you're not enough unless you look at this, if you've got this wrinkle, that wrinkle, something that is completely innate genetically to you, you're trying to alter it because you don't feel that it's perfect. Everybody's wanting to be perfect when, we well know that there is no such thing as perfection. It's just simply, it's a concept that is created in order to sell you stuff, in order for you to not feel so good about yourself. So you'll go out and seek every possibility that's out there for feeling better, when it's not external. Your beauty doesn't come from anything external. Your worthiness is not going to come from anything external. True worthiness, your authenticity isn't going to come from anything external in your life, that would be hollow, especially, in fact, in light of the fact that you're creating the reality that you're experiencing, and it's a self-perpetuating hamster wheel, right? It's you, you're just running in place, looking for something in the wrong place. And I know, and you know, as we travel, we've had to and gone to, lived in many different places. People always tell me, "Oh, wasn't that hard? Wasn't that hard to do that? Wasn't that?" I could never leave. And there were parents who never took their kids out of the same school. Their father went away for a year or two and left the kids in school. And I'm going like, I don't know. Let me see. Would you rather have your father around, or would you rather be in the same place? I personally preferred to have my dad around, or mother, because mothers are in the military and travel and have occupations like that as well. It's not just men. So, I'd rather have the family. My dad wanted the family to stay together and to have the family create the places we went, create the experiences, to expose us to these different peoples and the like. And, I don't know, I think I might have told this story before, but when we were in Taiwan, I'm African American, and so when we went to Taiwan in the mid-'60s, we went to a small little, I don't know how big the place was. I do not remember. It was more like a village where they had the Air Force Base. It wasn't really that big, but the Chinese people at that particular time had never seen anybody that wasn't like them. Nobody. Mm-hmm. They hadn't seen anybody with dark skin except on television. And so when we would go into the little small town that was there, or drive through it, or stop to get something, we'd get a crowd around us. We'd get a crowd of Chinese people around us of all different ages, and even the adults. They're like touching us and laughing and wondering, does that come off? That was really what they were thinking. They didn't speak English. However, it was, the touching and the giggling, and my mother said, just don't let it bother you. The fact is, they've never seen anybody like you before. So please keep in mind that the way that you react is the way that they're going to think anybody else in the future that they see like you is going to react when they come in contact with them. And I said, right. Oh, okay, cool. So just laugh. Just laugh.
You know what's interesting, Michael, is you have such a beautiful smile. You have a big, beautiful smile. Your brother and your sister.
I grew into it.
No, but you know what? It's interesting because it is such a powerful part of your persona that when you smile, it lights up a room. And I'm sure that was part of it too, because it's maybe a little bit more of this is just my view, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but more of a conservative, timid culture, and shyer back then. I mean, things have evolved since then, but I even know when we traveled as children, traveling to different places, that we were very different, based on lots of different things that we wore, or just the way that we talked. You're Canadian, that's such a funny way to talk.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. And I just think that as you kind of step out into this world, there are different things that make us so unique. And David had said something about, and I don't know if you remember this, about being bullied. One of the children had asked him, did he ever get in fights because of the way that he looked? Yeah. And he said, yes, that he had, and he found himself at one point, he's very honest about it, that he found himself being the bully and being that bully, but he caught himself doing that. I think he recognized that a lot of those individuals that were creating that for him were disfigured on the inside. And he said, I really consider this a gift because I would rather have the disfigurement on the outside where everybody can see it rather than having it be on the inside. Yeah. And he said, some people may not see that as a gift. It's not like a present. You up and go, oh, my goodness, I'm so glad this is here. It was something that he recognized had allowed him to become the soul that he was meant to be on this planet and share his gifts with so many people.
So true. So true. I do remember that. Yeah, he was, he had become what he was compensating. He was compensating for the way his self-concept had not developed fully at that particular point in time, and he was acting out. And what's interesting about it is the awareness, how fast the awareness came, the self-awareness of what he was doing, and that he quickly recognized that that's not who he was. Mm-hmm. And I've always said that bullies, they have they feel as if they're living with a deficit, and they're compensating for what they feel they do not have by making other people feel not so good. And that somehow energizes them. And for the person who's being bullied, it's a function of understanding and not judging that person, and not feeling sorry for them, but simply understanding that there are other factors that are at work with them. You don't know where their family life is. They don't know what their experiences have been up to that particular point, and they're just lashing out, looking for love, right? Looking for love. Mm-hmm. And so it was so wonderful to see how quickly he transformed. He evolved beyond that, and where it led him was a place that absolutely everybody I know wants to be. Right? Everybody wants to have that loving relationship, feel good about themselves, love their life, and believe that their value is right up there. And something we mentioned earlier about putting somebody above you or below you. I told my friend in South Africa, I think it was last week, I said, please understand, it doesn't matter where you are, what you have, just do yourself a favor. The kids that are coming there, room and board, their parents have money and all that kind of stuff, that does not in any way put them above you, and don't see them as being at a level higher than you, and don't see anybody who has less than you as being at a lower level than you. We are all on the same level. We're all growing. It's not about what you see on the outside. It's about what you see on the inside. And so you have this kid, he's 23, he's not a kid really, he's 23, has such a wonderful disposition. He has a warm smile, a great personality, and I recognized that the minute that I met him. And I can recognize that with people. I don't know, maybe it's a gift that I can sense the good in people, the love in people. That that smile that I have today was, as I said earlier, a bunch of teeth in my mouth way back when I was 7. They were really large, and I need to really kind of grow into those teeth. And I'm happy that I have. And I can't say honestly that I've been totally happy about my smile or my teeth over my entire lifetime. It wasn't like, oh, these are fantastic, I love these. We all continue to evolve based on our experiences, and I've done just the same as you, and just as the same as we are all doing. And I truly believe in my heart that my mother was looking for signs of things that lit me up, and discovered that one of playing music, or being in percussion. I've always got percussion going on in my head and in my arms and my hands and my fingers and my feet. And we all have something that's special. And in my view, David's special was what he had going on the inside, his own self-confidence, his being personality, the fact that he loved life and he didn't see himself as being deficient, and that he had the ability and developed it and worked on it with intention to communicate with absolutely anyone. And I know people who see themselves as fashion models that fall short of being able to communicate with people, because they've worked on the outside, and they derive their identity from the outside, their value from outside of themselves and their external world from other people. And you sit down, can you have a conversation? I'd like to say, I'd like to know a little about millions of things, rather than knowing a whole lot about a handful of things.
Mm-hmm.
We got a big wide world out there, and as my girlfriend would tell you, communicating with people is really about connecting with them on whatever level you're on at the time. You know, I don't watch a lot of sports, and my girlfriend's always surprised when I'm sitting at a bar watching something, and somebody I don't know sitting next to me, and they talk about something, and something just comes out, a statistic or something that just all of a sudden they go, yeah, that's right. You know, I'm going, and Sandy looks at me like dumbfounded, like, where did that come from? Because I'm going, how did you know that? Where did you find that out? And I'm like, yeah, well, somehow I'm like a I don't know what to call it. I absorb. Like I'm like a sponge. Mm-hmm. And I hear things. I might read a little line about something. It's just, it goes by my eyes, into my brain, out the backside, you know. But at some particular point, it becomes something that allows me to connect with another person. And that's always, that I'm always alert to that. And I loved how David moved through his life being able to connect with absolutely anyone because of his own self-confidence and understanding that his look was not a deficit. It was actually a benefit. Technically, it brought people to him, and it brought people to him that he could connect with. You know, it wasn't like people staying away. People came to him, right? They might have had goofy questions. They might have had questions that he might have thought at the moment. I mean, he was way past that this is an inappropriate question time in his life. It was like, I'd heard that before.
Absolutely.
But, you know, but he could dazzle them with his personality and his love of self. He could dazzle people with that power that he had within him that we all really want to develop. It's something that nowadays it's like it's a superpower. He tapped into his superpower, and that carried him through
totally agree with you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think a lot of us mask our superpowers. And David couldn't hide behind the conventional physical mask, so he did something so revolutionary. He became completely, transparently, unapologetically himself. Imagine that.
Authentic.
You know, authentic self-acceptance. Yep. Total superpower. And he radiated a light, and I think that's why people were drawn to him. And it makes that standard of physical beauty pale by comparison, because it really was. It was the ultimate form of self-empowerment. And it was fantastic. It's interesting, Michael, because it's perceptions, too, because I think about your smile, and I think it's magnificent. I think, oh, geez, I wish I had a nice big smile like that. I mean, my smile's fine for my face, if it's my face. But when I was growing up, and I moved a lot, and so I was always the new kid. My mother had my hair cut very short, and I had long, skinny legs for my friends. So I was always being put with the boys in school pictures, in team sports. Kids found out that my father was involved in hockey, so I was expected to be good at it too. And the kids teased me and bullied me. There was nothing at any of the schools that I moved to that other kids hadn't said. And I'd heard it before. Tell me something new. Come up with something original. But it taught me to be resilient. And I'm grateful for my long, skinny legs. They have carried me many places. I became a hurdler in high school. I used them to climb mountains, and they still carry me where I need to go today. And that's sort of the way that he was, too. I think that he was so comfortable in his own skin that he invited everybody to drop their shields and love themselves, too. And I think at the end of that whole speech that he gave, the children I think they all wanted to go up and hug him. Because I think in each one, I looked at their eyes, and I think in each one of them, they saw an aspect of their own truth and their own perceived shortcomings, I guess is the word. I don't know what it is, or vulnerabilities, or the need to be seen and be authentic. And it gave them hope. it gave them that light that they wanted to strive towards. And I really loved it. It was like Ho'oponopono on steroids for me. Really.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was definitely that. I mean, he got to the point where he didn't allow others to tell him how he should be. And that's, he tapped into his own authenticity. We all have it. We all have our authentic self. We just have to shed the layers of paint that we've been layering on top of ourselves for, years and years and years. And I think I mentioned that example before, but that's really what we do. We cover ourselves up, and we put a mask on. And that's how we engage with other people, because we think that is the way that they want us to be. And it's your freedom, as I was listening to a gentleman today, Darius Wright. Freedom comes from self-love. Freedom comes from self-love and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. When you love yourself and you forgive yourself on every day for whatever it is that you do that might be out there, something different. You might think, oh, well, I shouldn't have done that. No, it is what it is. You've done it. The fact is you've become aware of the fact that you've done something, and you know now not to do that next time, or you know now to do more of that next time. That's really what it's about, right? So the freedom that you get, freedom in life is being who you are. Your authenticity gives you absolute and total freedom from everything. Right. If you think about that, that's a real powerful thing. I mean, really, and empowering. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can shed what everybody thinks about you. You don't care. Like I'm at the point in my life. I mean, Lord knows, 6.8 decades. I don't really care what people think. I know who I am. I know, and if I dress a certain way or whatever, it's for me. It's not for other people. They might compliment me on because they like my authenticity or like what I'm wearing. But bottom line is, I feel good about me, and I curate like a dandy curates.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really, and that's the beauty of it. My girlfriend said, I've got two formal shirts that I'm going to pick up, French cuff formal shirts that I just took to the laundry. And she said, what are you going to do with them? You're going to take your tuxedo on this trip? I said, no. I might wear it with a pair of jeans.
Oh, that's awesome. I
wear
love that.
Wear a formal shirt with a pair of jeans and cuffs and put a blazer on and a pair of, loafers. I mean, the fun thing, if I love it, that's all that counts. If I love it.
You'll radiate that, absolutely. And, Michael, it's interesting. When you said that, it made me think of that whole love at first sight. Like, you see those shirts, they makes you fall in love with them. But then you take that second glance and you put them on, and it just transforms everything. And I think that's really the heart of this conversation, because so many of us spend our lives judging ourselves on that first glance. That you can only wear that shirt if you wear these type of pants or this jacket.
Yeah. No, but it's a tuxedo shirt. Right. It only goes with that.
But you have the confidence to shine no matter what you pair it with. And I think so many of us see our flaws or judge ourselves for our mistakes or embrace our insecurities or go back to those regrets. But if we really, truly give ourselves that second glance, what can we discover? And that, for me, was part of inspiration from this episode, because there was courage and resilience and wisdom and beauty and love, lots of love. Not just from his wife, not just from the audience of children. It was love of himself, and that was really such a gift. That was really one of the greatest gifts. It was him helping other people see themselves differently and just really, truly live their lives and embrace that loving perspective. I just thought it was fabulous.
I agree. When you're deeply connected, this is something that came to me. When you're deeply connected to your authentic self, nothing can touch you. Nothing can harm you. Nothing can shake you. You are unshakable completely. And he was somebody that was unshakable. That's the point he brought himself to. And evidently very early in life. It wasn't something that he just got, that he discovered in the last 10 years. I mean, it was something that when he was the realization of the power that he actually had within him once he got over what other people thought about him. There's a lot of time wasted. There's a lot of energy wasted and feelings wasted, responses and reactions wasted by, focusing on what your external world thinks about you. And that's a shame. It's just something that when you get beyond it, you're a very, very, you tap into it, and all of a sudden you start seeing the wonder in you. You start seeing the beauty in you. You start seeing the special gifts that you have and the talents that you have and how you are different than other people, not better than them, but just how different and unique you are yourself. Once you connect with that,
beautiful.
The strength that gives you, that it empowers you with, is nothing that anybody can take away. It is all you. And we are coming into an age where, in my view, in the view of, I know Pam Gregory and Bashar and Darius Wright and all these people that are out on YouTube right now, they're saying these wonderful things, kind of helping us understand that there's a transformation. The energy of this earth is changing. And one of the benefits of it is that people will rediscover and remember their authentic selves. They'll tap into who they really are and understand that the mask that you're wearing is not necessary, that you can take the mask off and you can run like an unbridled horse on in Wyoming, or Montana, where there's no fences. You can just run wild, right? And in that continue to now be on another journey, the journey of how you can expand upon that authenticity, how you can, because it's limitless, it's infinite. You're an infinite being. And so love, the love and the joy. What just I don't know, I'm lost for words right now. when you're free, there's so much expanse for you. There's infinite possibilities for you when you step out of the shell that you've placed yourself in and take off the mask.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely. Infinite. Yeah, and it's just like his wife did. She pulled back that curtain, and we need to do that with our own judgment ourselves and look with our heart and take a second glance and see the miracle that you are. And when you do, as you said, Michael, you can run free and you can achieve anything and do anything and be whomever that you were meant to be. And thank you, David Roche, for shining your light so brightly. Thank you, Michael, for this conversation, because there's so much that we still need to discover and how we need to truly be seen, or how we need to truly see. And, thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in and expanding your consciousness and choosing to connect and choose connection over separation, because it's really what's shifting. And I think that that's what's bringing in the light. And I'm so grateful to you, Michael, and grateful to each and every one of you for joining us here on Connect to Love and just all the gifts that you bring forth to this world. We're so blessed. So thank you. Absolutely.
I agree. Yeah. I don't think I could have said that any better. I mean, you are definitely special individuals. Each one of us is unique and special. We just have to spend some time tapping into that, connecting with who you are. All right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so next time, take that second glance and, of course, keep connecting to love, and peace out. Thank you.
Thank you.